You're 58 years old. The kids finally moved out last year. You've been in the same house for 23 years, and you're sitting on $340,000 in equity. Your financial advisor keeps telling you to downsize. Your real estate agent found you a perfect condo, $485,000, maintenance-free, closer to your grandkids. But here's what's keeping you up at night. Your current mortgage is $1,850 a month at 3.2% from your 2014 refinance. Your total housing costs, with taxes and insurance, about $2,600 a month. If you buy that condo with your equity as a down payment, you're looking at a new mortgage at 6.5% interest. Suddenly, your housing costs jump to $3,400 a month. And you're thinking, wait, I'm supposed to be reducing my expenses in retirement, not increasing them by $800 a month. Meanwhile, you looked at rentals in the same area. Nice two-bedroom apartment, modern finishes, maintenance included, $2,100 a month. But everyone's telling you the same thing they've told you your whole life. Don't throw your money away on rent. You've been a homeowner for over 2 decades. Why would you stop now? So here's the question that brought you to this video. At this stage of life, with these interest rates, with retirement on the horizon, should you buy again or should you rent? And here's what nobody in your circle wants to admit. There's actual math that answers this question. It's called the 7% rule. And once you understand it, you'll stop making housing decisions based on what worked in 1985 and start making them based on what works right now, in 2026, with your specific situation. My name's Bruce, and I've spent 30 years watching people in their peak earning years and early retirement make catastrophically expensive housing decisions because everyone keeps repeating the same advice that was true 40 years ago but is financial suicide today. If you've ever wondered whether it still makes sense to buy at your age, or if you should sell and rent, or if you're being pressured by family to stay in the market, hit that subscribe button, because today we're breaking down the rent versus buy decision using 2026 numbers specifically for people aged 45 to 65. And I'm warning you, the answer is going to contradict everything your parents taught you about real estate. Let's get straight to it. Here's the myth that's been drilled into your generation since you were 25 years old. Home ownership is the foundation of wealth building. Renting is for young people who haven't figured it out yet. If you're not building equity, you're falling behind. Beautiful sentiment, financially illiterate nonsense. Because here's what they conveniently leave out. When you own a home in 2026, you're hemorrhaging money every single month in ways that have nothing to do with building equity. You're just hemorrhaging it in directions that sound more respectable at dinner parties. According to 2026 housing market analysis, the break-even point between renting and buying has shifted dramatically and not in favor of buying. But nobody wants to tell people in your age bracket this because there's an entire industry that profits from you believing home ownership is always the answer. Let me show you where your money actually goes when you build equity. When you own a home, you have 3 massive costs that vanish into thin air every month, just like rent. The difference is, nobody calls them throwing money away, even though that's exactly what they are. Cost number 1, property taxes. You bought the house, you own it outright, or you're paying a mortgage on it. Doesn't matter. You still owe the government a percentage of its value every single year for the privilege of ownership. In the United States, the average property tax rate in 2026 is 1.11% of home value annually. On a $485,000 condo, that's $5,383 per year. That's $448 a month, gone forever. You're not building equity with property taxes. You're paying a recurring bill for an asset you supposedly own. And here's the kicker. As home values increase, so do your taxes. That $485,000 condo appreciates to $520,000 in 3 years? Congratulations, your property taxes just went up too. Cost number 2, maintenance and repairs. Here's what your real estate agent won't mention during the showing. Financial experts recommend budgeting 1 to 2% of your home's value annually for maintenance. Let's be conservative and use 1%. On a $485,000 home, that's $4,850 per year. That's $404 a month for the water heater that dies, the HVAC system that needs replacing, the roof that springs a leak, the appliances that break down. At your age, do you really want to be dealing with finding contractors, getting estimates, supervising repairs? This isn't equity. This is the cost of keeping your asset from deteriorating. And if you don't spend this money, you're not saving it. You're just deferring expenses that will cost you even more later or tank your resale value. Cost number 3, the opportunity cost of your capital. This is where the 7% rule comes from. Pay attention, because this is going to change how you think about your down payment. Your money has opportunity cost. When you take that $340,000 in equity from your current home and put it into a new property, you're making a choice. You're choosing real estate over every other investment option available to you. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned an average of 10% a year over the past century. Meanwhile, homes traditionally appreciate by 4 to 5% annually. The difference, about 5%, is what you're giving up by tying your money up in a house instead of investing it in diversified index funds. Now you might be thinking, but Bruce, I'm not buying the whole house with cash, I'm getting a mortgage. Exactly, which makes it worse. You're putting down $340,000, then financing the remaining $145,000 at 6.5% interest. So you're losing 5% opportunity cost on the down payment and paying 6.5% interest on the loan. Let's do the math on that $485,000 condo. Down payment, $340,000, financed amount, $145,000, opportunity cost on down payment at 5% is $17,000 per year. Mortgage at 6.5% on the $145,000 is approximately $9,425 per year in the first year. Combined, that's $26,425 per year, or $2,202 per month. Now, let's add it all up. Property taxes, 1.11% of home value, maintenance, 1% of home value, opportunity and interest, roughly 5% of home value. That's approximately 7% of the home's value annually going out the door, money that you'll never see again, just like rent. This is the 7% rule. To find out what home ownership actually costs you per month, take the home price, multiply by 7%, divide by 12. $485,000 times 7% equals $33,950 per year. $33,950 divided by 12 equals $2,829 per month. That's how much you're throwing away every month as a homeowner in this scenario. Money that's gone forever, identical to rent in terms of building wealth. So if you can rent a similar property for less than $2,829 per month, renting is financially superior. Period. Here's what I want you to do right now. Take the price of a home you're considering in your area, multiply by 0.07, divide by 12. That's your break-even rent. Is renting cheaper where you live? Now let's talk about what's actually happening in 2026, because if you're making this decision in your 50s or early 60s, you don't have time to wait for the market to recover from a bad decision. Mortgage rates in 2026 are averaging 6.3%, according to Redfin's forecast. That's down slightly from 2025's 6.6% average, but we're nowhere near the 3 to 4% rates that made buying a no-brainer 5 years ago. If you bought or refinanced between 2020 and 2021, you're probably sitting on a rate in the low 3% range. That's a massive advantage you'll give up if you buy again. United States mortgage rates are expected to hover near 6.3% throughout 2026. Some optimistic predictions put rates occasionally dipping into the high 5% range, but not for any meaningful period. And home prices? Zillow economists expect U.S. home values to grow 1.2% in 2026, while Redfin expects the median U.S. home sale price to rise 1% year over year. Translation: Homes are getting more expensive, rates are staying high, and affordability remains terrible. But here's what's interesting about rents. As of September 2025, median rent prices had declined year over year for 26 straight months. Rental affordability is actually improving, while home buying affordability stays abysmal. Nationwide, rents are expected to rise about 2 to 3% year over year through 2026, roughly the pace of inflation. That's manageable, predictable, and doesn't require you to liquidate decades of equity to make it happen. Now here's where it gets really interesting for your age group specifically. You're not 31 years old trying to build wealth from scratch. You're 45 to 65. You've already built equity. You've already owned. You've already done the responsible homeowner thing. The question now is, what's the smartest move for the next 20 to 30 years of your life? Because here's what most people don't realize. The decision to buy versus rent looks completely different at 58 than it does at 28. At 28, you might live in that house for 40 years. Transaction costs get amortized over decades. You have time to weather market downturns. You have decades of appreciation ahead of you. At 58, you might live in that house for 15 years before health, mobility, or lifestyle changes force another move. Transaction costs eat up a much larger percentage of your remaining ownership period. You don't have 40 years to wait for appreciation to bail you out of a bad purchase. Let me paint you a picture of what buying at your age actually looks like in 2026. You sell your current home. After real estate commissions, 6% of sale price, closing costs, and moving expenses, you're looking at $25,000 to $35,000 in transaction costs just to sell. You buy the new place, closing costs on the purchase run another 2 to 5% of the purchase price. On a $485,000 condo, that's another $10,000 to $24,000. You've now spent $35,000 to $59,000 in transaction costs before you've lived in the new place for a single day. That's money you'll never recover unless you stay long enough for appreciation to offset it. And at 1 to 2% annual appreciation, that takes years. Meanwhile, the renter paid first month's rent and a security deposit. Total transaction cost, $4,200. They can move again in a year if they need to without losing tens of thousands of dollars. This is where the psychology comes in, because even though the math says renting makes more sense, you're fighting against 40 years of conditioning that says home ownership equals success and renting equals failure. Let me address what you're thinking right now. But Bruce, I'm not building any equity when I rent. You're also not building much equity in the early years of a new mortgage at 6.5%. At 6.5% on a $145,000 loan, you're paying roughly $780 per month in interest in year one. Your building may be $130 to $180 per month in equity initially. Meanwhile, if you rent for $2,100 instead of buying with $2,829 in total costs, you have $729 per month to invest. In an index fund returning 10% annually, that $729 per month becomes $150,000 in 10 years. That's real liquid wealth you can access without selling your own. But it's forced savings. I need the discipline. You know what else is forced savings? An automatic transfer from your checking account to a brokerage account. Set it up once, boom, forced savings without illiquidity, without transaction costs, without tying yourself to a specific location. At your age, liquidity matters more than it did at 35. You might need to move for aging parents. You might want to relocate near kids or grandkids. You might face health issues. A rental lease gives you flexibility. A house you own traps you or costs you $50,000 to escape. But the tax deductions. The standard deduction in 2026 is $14,600 for individuals, $29,200 for married couples. Unless your mortgage interest, property taxes, and other itemized deductions add up to significantly more than that, you're not getting any tax benefit from homeownership. And even if you do itemize, the benefit is marginal, nowhere near enough to offset the opportunity cost and transaction costs. But rent keeps going up. So do property taxes. So does homeowners insurance, especially if you're in Florida, California, or anywhere with increasing climate risks. So does maintenance. Older you get, more expensive contractors get. More things break. Your mortgage payment is fixed. Your total cost of homeownership absolutely is not. Here's where I'll be completely fair. There are real, legitimate benefits to owning that don't show up in a spreadsheet. Benefits of owning: complete control over your space, paint the walls, renovate, landscape. Can't be forced to move by a landlord selling the property. Predictable base housing cost with fixed mortgage. Emotional attachment and sense of permanence. Pride of ownership. This is real, even if it costs money. But there are also costs nobody talks about. Costs of owning: you're locked in, can't easily relocate for better opportunities, family needs, or lifestyle changes. You're responsible for every repair, every disaster, every emergency. Your wealth is illiquid and trapped in walls. You're concentrated, most of your net worth in a single asset in a single location. At your age, dealing with maintenance and repairs becomes increasingly burdensome. According to NerdWallet's 2025 Homebuyer Report, 52% of American renters prefer renting to deal with all the expenses and effort of homeownership, and 36% plan on renting forever. That's not failure. That's people doing the math and choosing freedom over being house poor. Here's what the numbers actually show. Based on current 2026 rates and prices, assuming an 8% annual investment return, renting and investing the difference leaves you approximately $120,000 wealthier after 10 years compared to buying, in many market scenarios. Let me repeat that. Over 10 years, renters who invest the difference can end up $120,000 richer than equivalent homeowners. That's not a rounding error, that's a comfortable retirement buffer. Now, I'm not saying buying is always wrong. I'm saying buying in 2026 is wrong for most people in most markets, especially if you're in your 50s or 60s.